When should you keep a secret from your partner or husband or wife? Maybe never. Maybe sometimes under certain circumstances. Do secrets imprison us and create unnecessary shame? Today we'll explore the subject in the area of secrets. Welcome to Insights. I'm Dick Goldberg, and our guest today, Dr. Tamara Afifi, is an expert in this area. She's a professor at the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Iowa. Her research focuses primarily on communication patterns that foster risk and resiliency in families and other relationships, with an emphasis on privacy, secrets, disclosure, and avoidance. She's received numerous awards for her research and writing on family communications. Thanks for joining us, Tammy. Tammy, is there a human being without a secret?
Well, yeah, I'm sure there are human beings without secrets. I mean, our research shows that generally it hovers around 90% of people have a secret of some sort, and they're not always negative. They can be positive, like you're keeping a surprise from a partner or a birthday surprise or something like that. Or a lot of people keep their pregnancies a secret in the first, trimester.
Yeah.
So they're not always negative, and a lot of them are just neutral. They just don't feel like it's anybody's business, for example.
Really? But no one carries a secret for a lifetime, like I'm really a great singer, but no one's going to know it or something?
No, I mean, generally, yes. Secrets tend to be a lot more negative than just avoiding a topic, because people are generally keeping them secret for a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they do tend to have a more harmful effect than just simply avoiding a topic.
When you say they have a more harmful effect, in what way?
Well, I mean, for example, as communication scholars and as relationship scholars, one of the things that we study that's different than psychology, for example, is we look at how people think others are going to respond to a secret and then how they actually respond after people have revealed the secret. So there's a lot of research that shows that, people keep secrets for really good reasons. Sometimes people just react really negatively to past secrets, and people then sequester what they're feeling because they're worried about how the other person is going to react, especially in families where a lot of the relationships aren't voluntary, and so they're your family. And so you might keep things in because you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to create more conflict, and you're worried about how they might react.
But you said sometimes people are surprised. The reactions aren't what they expect all the time.
Yeah, actually, one of the most interesting findings, John Coughlin and my husband, actually, Walida Fifi, did a study, and they found that when people revealed a secret, the reaction was actually a lot better than they anticipated. There was a certain portion of the population that, yes, they thought the person was going to react negatively, and they did, but for the vast majority of people, the reaction was a lot more positive than they thought. And the reason is, when people keep secrets, they tend to blow them out of proportion. So they begin to stew and mull over it, and the more that you mull about a secret or ruminate, the more negative it becomes in your head.
And a bigger deal, I suppose. Exactly.
It becomes a bigger deal than it really is, perhaps. And people are generally a lot more understanding, I think, than we give them credit for.
Well, let's talk about that secret that most people are curious about when you get to this area, which is you've had an affair.
Yeah.
And it's over.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been asked this 1,000 times.
Yeah.
The affair is over, and you're back in your marriage 100%, but you made a mistake. Do you tell your spouse, partner, about your affair?
Yeah, that's the golden question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that there's one right answer to that, because it's probably going to be negative either way, right? So, I mean, it's obviously best not to have the affair to begin with, but, I always think of it as, does my partner have the right to know this information?
Do they have that right?
And I think they do. Because if you're in a trusting, marriage, my perception would be that they need to know that information. Do children need to know? I don't think so, necessarily. I think there's a difference between, the privacy rights in a marriage versus with children. I mean, that also depends, but that's a tough question because, so for example, let's say that the affair happened 30 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
And you never told the person. Is it relevant anymore? It could create a lot of havoc in a marriage that would have been healthy otherwise.
Well, what do you say to the person who says, look, the teller, the person who had the affair and it's over, is telling her spouse or his to get rid of their own guilt? This doesn't help the person who hears it. It doesn't help the marriage. Why don't you just sit on it and not tell?
Yeah, there's definitely that perspective that, what is the real benefit here? Is it because I really need to ease my guilt?
Right.
Or is it because you need to know the information? I do think if there's that type of secret sitting there, it has been affecting a person's mental health and probably the health of the relationship. So if it's hurting you, you're not really able to be the person who you want to be because you've been dishonest.
But let's say you have the ability to compartmentalize. And
what's that?
Say you have the ability to compartmentalize your emotions. Some people do have that. And they're not always terribly screwed up. And you think, why tell her? It'll just create havoc and hurt her. I can keep this secret. Would it be okay to keep it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, each his or her own, right? That is a possibility, and you're right, it may do more damage to the relationship to actually tell the person. I guess to me, that is the big question, how much is it hurting the relationship versus harming your mental health?
So if you're feeling guilty all the time and you feel there's a lack of intimacy because of your secret, then you got to spill the beans, right?
Yes, I would, because if it's affecting your sexual relationship, if you're not as emotionally close because you feel like you've kept some really important thing from this person, I think it is definitely in the best interest of the relationship to talk about it and to try and manage as a couple.
But wouldn't you be afraid that your spouse would leave you when they hear this news? Say, it's over. I love you. I'll never, but...
Yeah, what's interesting about the research on infidelity is infidelity in dating relationships is very different than infidelity in marriage.
How's that?
A lot of people think, if I discover my partner's cheating on me, it's over, like I'm done with it. But the research actually shows that in dating relationships, that's much more likely to be the case. In marriage, people are a lot more willing to go see a counselor, to work it out. I mean, especially if there are children involved. People aren't as easy to pull the trigger to say it's over.
Yeah.
And I also think that infidelity is really horrible. It should never occur. However, usually when it comes to a divorce, there are multiple reasons why people get a divorce, or multiple reasons why a relationship is dissatisfied. The other person maybe is a workaholic. Like, you really don't know.
Yeah.
The faceted nature of a marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, are there examples you can give us of a secret that should be kept secret? Beyond affairs. Should be kept secret.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for example, something just the person might not consider it appropriate. If I'm dating someone and we're in a relatively new relationship and something happened to be in my childhood, or God forbid I was raped or mugged, or I don't necessarily know you well enough to be able to tell you that. If we've been dating a really long time, or married or whatever, and at that point, it's probably best if you do know, so that you understand, like, my history, my relational history, my mental health history. But
it'd be interesting if there's a scale that rated people on openness and closeness. People who just blurt out everything and people who play it real tight to the vest. But I would think there's a big difference in personal style as to who keeps secrets and who doesn't.
Yes, there's some research in psychology on personality differences, that some people are just high disclosers and other people are high concealers. And most of the research shows that if you tend to be a high avoider or a high concealer, you tend to have a more difficult time coping.
Why is that?
With stressful situations, because you're not as likely to seek support. You're not as likely to problem solve. You're not as likely to show your emotions, to be able to relieve yourself of the stress. You know, for a lot of people, when they talk about something or even write it down, it's cathartic. Not always, again, because it depends upon the response. But generally, you know, research on health has shown for a long time that if people are able to talk about it with others and stuff, they're able to cope better with general life stressors.
Yeah. Yeah, I wondered. You feel badly for people who are carrying secrets that they and suffering shame?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's a huge has huge implications for mental health, right?
Yeah.
So there, you know, a lot of James Pennebaker's work in psychology has shown for years that people who have experienced traumatic events, just writing the trauma down on a piece of paper actually can improve their health. You know, improve their immune functioning. It makes them sick less often. You know, because you're harboring a secret, people tend to become preoccupied with it. It can kind of, you know, run their thoughts, determine everything they think about. It becomes a lot bigger than it is, and people become very stressed, you know, as a result. But again, those are pretty big secrets.
Yeah.
You know, everyday secrets that aren't quite so major may not affect you.
All right, this is a little off the wall, but let's say a boy at 15 had sex with an 11-year-old girl, and he never told anybody, and he's been keeping this secret his whole life. Should he tell anybody?
I don't know why he would necessarily need to.
Because it's hurting him. Because he's feeling tremendous shame.
Well, if he's feeling tremendous shame, yeah, you know, for his own mental health. And in terms of, do other people have the right to know? You know, I don't know. Maybe his potential partner at some point, if that person asks and wants to know. But yeah, if he's feeling shameful about it, yeah, it would be good, you know, to talk to someone, especially someone in a safe environment. And that's why people often disclose to counselors, because they're supposed to be neutral. Right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah, right. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, what if you've done something that's a crime? You got away with it. And it could be something like this. Maybe you were 17 and had sex with a 14-year-old, or who knows.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of different ways you might have done a crime that you're ashamed of.
Well, in the former example, I wasn't thinking it was a crime, just because it was like
right.
16 and 11. But, yeah, I mean, you know, again, it depends upon the circumstance. You know, was it you know, a crime in terms of like legal standards, or was it two teenagers, you know, fooling around and got carried away, or was it rape, or, you know, I mean, technically yes. I mean, but, you know, there are many people that this person could tell. They don't have to necessarily go to the authorities and tell the authorities. They could actually tell a parent, or they could tell a sibling, or they could tell a friend in more of a safe zone. Like, basically my research shows that the more afraid people are to talk to someone about something, the more likely they are to use indirect methods to reveal it.
Like what?
So the more negative I think a person is going to react, the more likely I am to reveal it in like an email or a letter. Or
you're hiding.
Or I'll
or
I'll like hint at things. You know, so let's say that I have had sex and I don't want my parents to know, and I'm a teenager. I might leave out evidence that I've had sex, but I don't have to reveal it directly. Yeah. The only instance where that's not true is when the topic of the secret is so important to the person's identity that to reveal it indirectly would be hurtful to themselves and others. So, for example, if I'm gay, people actually are much more likely to reveal it face-to-face because it's so important to their identity. But they'll use multiple methods. So they'll reveal it face-to-face, but they often tell siblings before they tell parents, and they'll often tell mothers before they tell fathers. Because they're trying to ease into it, they're trying to garner support. They might use hypothetical scenarios. A lot of people actually come out nowadays on Facebook. Because it's one way to like basically disclose to potentially hundreds of people at the same time.
Wow.
And then
is that a good method? Is that a good method?
Yeah. Like, you can just befriend me, you know?
Yeah. So you see who's with you and who's not.
Yeah.
But that's been, I'm sure, a source of suffering for young people who are gay, and let's say they're in high school or they're 14. I assume over time It's less a source of suffering.
Yeah, and what I think, often happens is, for example, they go off to college and they find people at college who have the same experiences, have the same feelings, have also been in the closet. There's a much larger population probably of people who, are like them or are supportive of their situation. And sometimes just even in high school or finding those people who can empathize and can understand with them gives them more courage to actually come out to their family and to other people. And just even one supportive family member can allow them to disclose. And that person in turn can help them bridge with those other family members. The interesting research on the coming out process too is that it is really a process. It occurs over multiple comings out. Sometimes people come out the first time and their parent doesn't quite get it. So they think that it's just a phase or that they'll eventually come around. And so the child feels the need to come out again. So they might use a different strategy the second time to try and get the point across. But the research also shows that even if your parent reacts negatively when you first come out, that attitude often changes within like a 2-year period. I think, sometimes parents might be a little bit shocked because their idea of this heterosexual marriage with their biological children kind of comes crumbling down.
Yes.
So they need time to really think of a new schematic, think of a new way of envisioning it. And over time, most parents end up coming around giving.
So if you're going to lay out a how-to to young people who are gay, how to come out from your research, what does your research show as a guideline?
I don't know that there is one right answer. I think it depends upon the person's specific, circumstance and how supportive their family is, for example, and their friends are.
I see.
There is a lot of research to show that it can be harmful to you if you actually disclose to people who aren't supportive. So, I think it's finding someone who's supportive first and kind of, disclosing to them and it can build up your efficacy or make you feel like you have the ability to then tell other people. And I think it's disclosing in your own way, disclosing in a way that makes you feel good about yourself, that makes you feel valued and appreciated. So for some people, that's disclosing at one time on Facebook, and that's how they feel the most empowerment. And for other people, it might be disclosing to someone they trust one-on-one first. So I think it depends on everybody's situation.
Speaking of disclosure, another type is confession at a church, at a Catholic church. Have you looked into that at all? What confessions of secrets does or doesn't do for people in that environment?
Actually, no, we haven't at all. I don't even know. I'm not familiar with research that's looked at that at all. It tends to be, a lot of the research in psych tends to be with, the original research in like the 1970s. A lot of that with Gerard was looking at therapeutic settings, but never with, not that I know of, with clergy or anything.
Yeah. Any thoughts or guesses about what you'd find if you researched confession and what it does for people? Because I assume what you're confessing, you haven't told anybody else.
And I'm sure that it's also very therapeutic because it has a similar type of effect as catharsis. However, I think religion is an interesting thing. I think, for example, we know through the research, religion gives people a lot of hope. And it is inspirational, and it really helps people cope with difficult circumstances because one of the things that it does is it gives you a sense of control, right? So if I don't know what to do, I give it up to God or Allah or whoever you're talking about, and it gives me a sense of control. But religion can also be a little bit restricting, too. It's a double-edged sword, right? So if you're gay, you may
and Catholic,
not be able to disclose that to a clergy person because it may not be supported by the church. Or, there are a lot of actions people might engage in or, beliefs or ways of life that are aren't condoned by, or they're condoned by the church. So
far, one of the things I'm hearing under what you're saying is secrets aren't good for you, and the more you can safely get them out, the better you'll feel. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, in general, yeah, most secrets are kind of unhealthy, but not always. Sometimes it's actually worse if you reveal. Like, there's some
Yeah,
interesting research.
but it's still
that-
painful. It's still
Yeah,
painful to have the secret.
it's still painful because it often means that the person who you're talking with, you may not have the type of relationship where you feel like you can
Right.
reveal it. Right?
But if you
So it's still
can,
painful.
if you can get that off your chest with people who are safe,
Yeah.
it sounds like you're
Then
almost
it's
always
better.
better off to do that. I couldn't think of the name of this book, but some man solicited secrets from all over the country and got tons of postcards. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I think it's called Post Secret online.
Yes. Have you looked into
Yeah.
that at all? And
I did a number of years ago. I just went online just to see what that was about. And yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, but nothing you can from that long ago you can share with us that you discern from that.
No, I think that is a really interesting outlet because it's anonymous, right? Anybody can post anything about anything that's ever happened. I think that is a really good outlet because, you're not going to be judged, right? It's just out there. You can look at it again, like you can go online and look at it online. So I think that is a good outlet.
Yet some of them were pretty heavy duty secrets, as I recall. I didn't read the whole book, but kind of, like I had sex with my father all the time, or I had all kinds of things that were very big that they'd never told anybody.
Right.
So
that alone could be very cathartic, and like I said, Jamie Pennebaker's work would support that just writing something down can actually release a lot of pent up stress and guilt and emotions, that are negative, and that alone can make you, feel some instant relief. But I do think that if it's a really heavy secret like that, it'll take probably more than one. Simply writing something down, I think it'll take, a lot more discussions, a lot more therapy than.
Yes, but just writing down, in other words, as you were talking about, let's say you're 14 years old and you're gay and you haven't told anybody because no one's safe, writing down how you're feeling about being gay and closeted is somewhat therapeutic?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
From your work, what are the most telling, important things you've derived from it in the world of secrets and family communication around this?
Well, I mean, I think one of the most important things that we know about families in general, is that I think family is the foundation of security. It's the foundation from which people grow and learn to mature and learn to trust others. Just the basic research on attachments, right? That children learn to trust other people. They learn to give love and receive love freely. Same thing with affection from their parents, from their primary caregivers. Well, that doesn't necessarily need to be their parents. But so the importance of parents having rules and guidelines and structure and respect in their family, but at the same time being very approachable, being very open to discussion. Like, one of the things that we know is that's harmful to children is what we call extreme levels of conformity orientation. So families that have too high of expectations for appropriate behavior and standards, and wanting my children to be exactly like me, to conform to my opinions. That tends to predict things like suicidal tendencies, feeling lower self-esteem, feeling bad about oneself. And we know that people are much less likely to reveal secrets to parents who they feel have these really high standards for appropriate behavior that the child may not be able to meet.
Yeah, we'll accept you and love you if you meet our standards.
Exactly. And we also know that families that are more open in their communication patterns tend to have children that are more likely to come to them when they're stressed or they're distraught, or and so in a family, for example, being able to talk about literally anything, sex, drugs, politics, religion, and kind of what I tell parents is, when your child comes to you with something, try not to overreact. It's like your first instinct.
Uh-huh.
Try to kind of be more neutral and listen to what they have to say.
So if your kid comes to you and says he's 12 years old, says, I tried pot today, Mom, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would be ready to bounce off the walls myself.
Uh-huh.
But here's I think the issue is that I think if you have an open communication pattern in your family, your child is more likely to come to you with a whole host of issues, and they're actually less likely to engage in risky behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So your child is actually less likely to do pot when you talk openly about issues, and that's unlike what people think. So parents, for example, think, gosh, if I talk to my child about sex, they're going to go out and want to have sex. Mm-hmm. And the research actually shows the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Well, there is some research to show that when parents talk a lot about sex, the child is actually going to go out and have more sex. But what that is modeling. So if the parent is promiscuous, the child is more likely to be promiscuous. So that's what that research is about. But most of it says that if I'm an approachable parent, so for example, when your child is 2, 3 years old, yeah, they should know the parts of their body. They should be able to articulate just, that I have a vagina, or, and not be embarrassed about their body, right? But they also need to be able to decipher what's public disclosure and what's private disclosures. But children will come to you with questions about sex, and not to be embarrassed about it, but just to have a conversation that's appropriate for their age.
Yeah.
So sex shouldn't be a one-time discussion. It should just be a very natural, ongoing process that becomes age-specific over time.
So you have to be a safe person to talk to, non-judgmental.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And then, and the point is, you can still be extremely conservative in your attitudes, but be open, but talk to your child what we call inductively from the bottom up. So instead of saying I know you would never even think about having sex, right? I mean, that's a very leading question.
Right. Instead
of saying that, saying, what are your thoughts about when it's the right time to have sex? And let the child lead the discussion, and then you can interject your thoughts and say something like, well, what my thoughts are you okay hearing my thoughts? And then you'd say something like, well, my thoughts are that when you have sex, that comes with a lot of emotion. It comes with a lot of responsibility. And then you can go on in a conversation about, maturity and age, and when is that right time and why. And what happens is, if a child is in that moment where they're kind of making out with a partner, they're actually more likely to stop and think, hey, yeah, I had that conversation with Dad the other day. Maybe I should wait.
Yeah.
Maybe it isn't the best time.
How is that different from a marriage in terms of making people feel safe to say anything? Husband and wife.
I don't know that it is that different. I think that you need to be open and supportive, and your marital partner should be your go-to person. The most important thing in a family is the marriage, is the partnership. Because if that isn't solid, everything else in the family begins to kind of, go awry.
Is it safe to say a model of a healthy marriage is one with almost no secrets, or no secrets, that the more secrets, the more unhealthy the marriage?
I mean, keep in mind that 90% of people have secrets. So everybody has secrets about...
Well, but you said it's like a surprise for your husband's birthday, you're keeping a secret. That's understandable. I mean a secret, not a secret for a couple weeks.
Something kind of silly, that you spent probably a little bit more money in your fantasy football league than you should have. But it's not a big deal. Or the wife went out and bought a sweater, but it's really not a big deal. I mean, it's not gonna, necessarily, ruin the relationship. But we're talking about big things, yes. The more secrets you're harboring that are really negative, yes, that isn't good for a marriage.
Before we finish, is there any takeaways you would like listeners to be sure they hear, so they can have a happier, richer life?
I mean, I think that in a marriage, whether it's marriage or with your children, creating an honest, trusting environment with your spouse and with your children, so that when times are stressed, or when you're having a difficult time, they are your go-to people, right? They're the people who you feel that, you can say anything to, and they're not going to turn their back on you, or they're going to support you. They may not agree with what you're doing, but that when times get tough, you can turn to them, because those are the people that lifelong are going to be your primary attachments, or the people you want to go to when you're stressed.
Well, Dr. Tamara Afifi, I thank you very much, and I hope you'll join us on next edition of Insights.
And remember, you can find all our podcasts at dickgoldbergradio.com or search for Dick Goldberg at iTunes or YouTube.